Welcome and hello. This is a support video for HEC RAS, and in this video I'm going to be dealing with Weir breach elevation warning and terrain modification. So what we're going to be doing is using terrain modification tools to resolve a warning that we encountered that deals with Weir breach elevation. All right. So I actually have the warning on the screen right now. I just completed an unsteady simulation for a 2D flow model. And here's the warning. It says the SA2D connection at this flow area to store, that's the name of the 2D connection, has a Weir breach lower than the cells they are connected to for the 2D flow area. So I'll unpack that and tell you what it means, but we also have this table of data down here. This output looks a little bit convoluted because you need to know that all of this text sort of goes together. This is the entire warning. What we'll be doing is correcting the terrain using the terrain modification tools to resolve this warning message, and then running the simulation one more time at the end of the video just to confirm that the changes that we made fix the warning. So this is not an error. The blue text here represents a warning message. The model still ran. We still have results, but it's also good to address the warning messages when you can. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me first show you the model briefly, at least what you need to know. All right, let me close this. What we have on the map here, this is RAS Mapper, is a storage area to the north, and then this is a dam. It's modeled as a storage area to 2D flow connection. And then south of that is our 2D flow area. So I could go ahead and zoom out a good ways and actually run the simulation. This is a large map, so I'm not going to scroll out too far. But let me go ahead and find the results. It's this one right here, I believe. And then let me toggle on the depth map. All right. Let me drag this back in time and then click the play button. So we should have a dam break and a flood inundation downstream of the dam. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this. And then let's see, what else should I show you? If I remove the Google map, we have a terrain layer. And then if I remove the terrain but add the Google map, you can see that as well. I'm going to turn off the depth layer and then turn back on the terrain. Actually, I'm going to turn off Google. Okay, we're going to come back to RAS Mapper to do the terrain modifications. But before then, I'm going to go over to the geometric data editor, edit geometric data. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. It's at the north end is where we're focused on. All right, so I got that right there. I'm going to click on the storage area 2D connection. This is our only storage area 2D connection on the map. And if I click on Weir and embankment, we see that the top elevation is 739.75, and it has a total length of 362.2. And this model is in metric units, so all of these stations and elevations are in meters. Okay, so 739.75, remember that, because if I click on the breach plan over here, now we have a top elevation of 739.75, and then a final bottom elevation of this breach, which is at 711 meters, and that is outlined by this red line here. You can read all the numbers you want. So this base width here is 161 meters. The side slope is 1:1. It takes an hour and 15 minutes for the total breach to take place. It starts at the very beginning of the simulation because this is the same start date and time as the beginning of the simulation. And then the breach progression is sinusoidal. What we're interested in here is making sure that the elevation of 711, which is the invert of this completed breach, is equal to or above the downstream connection to the 2D flow area. So let me bring up that error message once again, and then click on options, and then our view runtime messages. Here's the same messages we started with. Here's this table of values right here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. Oops. Okay, hopefully you can see this all right. I got the windows organized, hopefully. What we have here is the dam right here. The three gates are sort of on this side over here to the west. The middle of the breach is sort of centered, more or less. And this table right here, where it tells us that there's a warning, tells us that the Weir elevation at these 4 different points is 711, 711, 711, and 713. And that is below the cell elevation of 717, 717, 717, and 717. So that's corresponding to the elevation of cells 186 and 185, which is right here and right here. You can see the computation point and the number of that cell. Cell 186 has face points of 226 and 224, as we see right here. And then the cell 185 has face points of 224 and 222. So what we want to do is lower the elevation here at the top edge, this north edge of the 2D storage area, down to match 711, or it could be lower, but let's go ahead and just match 711 meters so that we don't have that error message anymore. Let's go back to RAS Mapper. So here's that. Before I start, I want to sketch the profile along this northern edge of the 2D flow area. So I'm going to go up to Features and then expand profile lines, right click, edit layer, and then I'm going to just sketch from left to right along this red line here, single click, and then a double click to stop it. Profile line, okay. Now I'm going to click edit, highlight that profile line, and then look at the cross section. All right, so this is looking in the downstream direction. The elevation of the ground surface starts at 740. It dips down to about 728. It goes up to almost 730 and then back down. This is the low part here, down to 723. This is where the 3 gates are, and then back up. This is the west side. All right, so basically what we're going to be doing in this terrain modification is taking this existing terrain and then lowering the ground surface down to 711. So that's quite a ways down here. And we'll go ahead and take a look at that at the end of the lesson. All right, so let's go ahead and start with those terrain modifications. So let's go ahead and put that down there and then scroll down. Here's our terrain layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to preserve this terrain layer as the original. I'm not going to make any changes. What I am going to do is make a copy of it, or a clone it's called, clone terrain. And then I'm going to call this terrain modified. So I'm going to be making all my changes in this terrain modified layer. Currently it's just a duplicate. But now I'm going to go right click and make some modifications, starting with a shape modification. This is a simple modification, and it's just going to be a rectangle would probably work well. I'll go ahead and just call it rectangle, and then go ahead and click. Right. I'm going to smooth this out of the way so I can see what I'm working with here. Instead of square, I'm going to click on rectangle, and then I'll call it rectangle 1. That's fine. The modification method here, I'm just going to go with replace terrain value with the elevation that I type in right here, which is going to be 711. Now the length in meters, that's going to be left and right from this view. Let's go ahead and say 100. Let me go ahead and put 200. Hold on a second. We'll see what it looks like and then be able to change it. And then for the Y value, I'll go ahead and say 50. And then the angle, it's going to be maybe 10 degrees. Okay, I'll click apply and see what that looks like. Okay, so it's a little bit small and the rotation's the wrong way. So let's go maybe negative 5 degrees. Okay, so that's a little better there. In fact, I can go ahead and just use these handles to resize this rectangle, and then the values in this table will update accordingly. So I'm going to go ahead and click apply and OK. I'm still in edit mode. Oh, wait, no, I'm in add mode. There's edit. Okay, so I'll click on my rectangle. All right, so I have the handles for editing. I'm just going to go ahead and expand this over in each direction, maybe not so far. And I'll go ahead and change this just to make sure that I've got that area included. It's a 30-meter cell size on the elevation map, so that's what I'm interested in, not so much the 70-meter cell size on the 2D mesh. All right, this handle right here also allows for rotation, but that looks pretty good right there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop edits and click yes, that I want to save. Now, if I'm curious what this profile looks like, I can confirm that that elevation is been saved. So I'm going to click on the terrain modified layer and come up to this ruler tool. I could also do a profile line, but this might be a little easier. So I'm just going to do a single left click to start it, and then a double left click down here, and then plot the terrain profile. All right. So this is what I'm looking for. This looks very goofy, I understand, but this elevation down here is what we just cut out. It's an elevation of 711 meters, exactly what we want it to be, because this is the invert or the lowest elevation of that dam breach. All right, so there's one more thing we need to do before we can rerun the model, and that is to assign the layer to our plan that we're going to run. So I'm going to go up to Project and then Manage Layer Associations. Now the geometry file that's associated with the plan that we run is this one here, Geometry 26. I'm going to change Terrain to Terrain Modified and then click Close. All right, so I think that's all we need to do. File save for good measure. Unsteady Flow Editor. Now I'm going to go ahead and click Compute once again. Now it's going to do the terrain pre-processing because we changed the terrain data. All right, and that looks like success. Let me just confirm here. Oops. Okay, I accidentally closed it. Let me go Options, View, Runtime Messages, and yep, looks like we have no blue text, no warnings like we had the first time. So that looks good. All right, we can go ahead and run the model once again. Oops. And then we could scroll to our depth layer right here, toggle that on, select that layer, and then roll back to the play bar. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out, and then we can go ahead and click play and then watch it go. There's play. All right, so same results as before, but we don't have that warning message. Again, that wasn't a fatal error we fixed, but it was worth addressing. All right, well, that is it for this support video. What we did was use some terrain modification tools in RAS Mapper as a way to resolve a warning message we got during the compute for a Weir breach elevation issue. If you're interested in sticking around for a little bit longer, I'm going to go ahead and make one more terrain modification. What I'm going to do here is zoom back in on the dam location, and then I'm going to toggle off the depth layer. And then something that was bothering me that I want to address here is click on, let's see, the terrain modified layer, and then click on the ruler tool here. And now what I'm going to do is sketch out that profile along the length of the river, double click, and then plot terrain. You may have noticed this before. It looks so wonky to have like a 9 or maybe an 8 meter wall here. So what I want to do is use channel modification tools to basically remove this soil as well. It doesn't have to be flat, but I want to basically smooth it out so it's a more smooth transition than what we're seeing right here. All right, so that's what I'm planning on doing. I want to quickly make a measurement across the way here. So I'll click on here and then a double click here. This length is 253 meters. That's good to know. So that will be my base elevation. All right, let's go ahead and make another modification. So down here in the left panel, terrain modified, I'm going to go right click, and now I'm going to go add modification layer. This time I'm going to go lines, and then I'm going to click on channel. Okay, I'll just use the name channel. That's fine. Now I need to sketch the channel out. So I'm just going to go from here down to about here. That's about 200 meters. We'll find out. So double click. All right, so here we have in this profile plot down here, we have the existing terrain is in brown, which goes like this. And then the proposed or the final terrain is in magenta. So we can modify this magenta line right here. Instead of lower, I'm going to go ahead and just say replace terrain value. So the magenta line here is now going to entirely depend on the values in this table right here. Now for station 0, I'm going to change this 722 down to 711 and then tab off. Okay, that looks good. So it's a smooth transition. So at the end of that station, about 170 meters away, it goes up to 715, much better than having a giant wall there. And then in the top plot, this is the cross section. Now I measured that the bottom width is going to be about 250 meters. So I'll go ahead and change 20 to 250. And then we'll say the side slope is, 2 to 1. And then the top width we'll say is, I don't know, 500. It's going to intersect with the sky anyway, so that should be fine. All right, so let's go ahead and click OK and see what that looks like. Okay, I think that looks a lot better. Let's go ahead and sketch another line now. I need to go ahead and stop editing. Okay, and here's the ruler tool, then single click, and then a double click, and then plot terrain profile. Okay, that's much better. So again, we have our deep cut down to 711 meters, and then a slight increase where it meets the natural grade once again, and then the normal downstream terrain takes over from there. All right, well, that was just a extra little task using terrain modification tools in RAS Mapper.